All right, back on the conversation. So now, of course, Republicans are planning to burn down the country. It's about a specific issue. We'll explain. And Democrats are planning to do very little about it. So, welcome to America. It's a regular day here. So this one's about the debt ceiling. We brought on Ben Winck here. He's an economy reporter at Insider we've talked to before. He's written about this. We'll talk to him about it. Ben, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, appreciate it.
No problem. So Republicans are playing chicken with the debt ceiling. It's mental. It's been raised 78 times. Not raising it would be a catastrophe. And the Democrats, as usual, are feckless and have no idea how to fight back. So that's your summary. But first, the things that you had in your article about what Moody's says would happen if they do not raise the debt ceiling. And just for the folks at home, real quick, the debt ceiling is, hey, we owe this money. We, by law, it can only have this much debt, so we need to raise it because we already spent the money, so we should pay our debts. Otherwise, the dollar won't have the full faith and credit, and it'll be a disaster. But Moody's explains the disaster. So Ben, what did they say would happen if we don't raise the debt ceiling?
Yeah, so a couple months back when we were in the same position with the same action taking place between Democrats and Republicans, Moody's came out with these estimates that said, well, first off, hitting the debt ceiling without raising it, suspending it, just crashing through that limit, it would wipe out around $15 trillion in household wealth through assets, right? Stocks, bonds. Financial markets would just plummet. I mean, it would be, they said that stocks would fall about a third before they start to stabilize and maybe move back up. And then also you have to keep in mind that the economic recovery is far from over. We are not fully healed yet. And Moody's said, if we hit this ceiling, if we burst through this cap, the economic turmoil that would occur would wipe out around 6 million jobs. So that would really put us way back as far as the labor market recovery. It would cost American families, households, trillions of dollars. I mean, this is the worst case scenario, especially when you consider, we are just kind of getting back onto the horse with hiring, with consumer spending.
So Ben, people gotta ask at home, why? Why would all those catastrophic things happen? By the way, not a good sign for our economy that if you do one little thing wrong, $15 trillion and 6 million jobs are gonna disappear overnight. Bit of a house of cards, but that's a slightly separate topic. In terms of the why, I think most people don't know why. Why would that catastrophe happen?
So the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, right? Other countries, corporations, people around the world rely on the dollar to be stable. And that stability is built on the foundation that the US will always repay its debts. It always has, and that consistency, that stability is why the dollar is so strong, why it has this reputation globally. The moment the US hits the debt ceiling, exceeds it, and then throws the country, the government into default, that immediately erodes that bulletproof reputation the dollar has. And you can't get that back, right? You can't put this toothpaste back in the tube. Once you do that, that's done. Immediately borrowing costs will skyrocket, right? Because the dollar just doesn't have the relevance internationally. Other countries might look for a different reserve currency. The US will lose that economic power from its currency because it's just not as dependable as it used to be. So that translates to, for everyday Americans, that translates to higher borrowing costs for car loans, for mortgages. If you miss a credit card payment, you're going to be paying more in interest. Service members, if you hit the debt ceiling, they won't receive compensation. Federal workers won't receive paychecks. Social security checks won't go out. I mean, this would really affect everybody.
Yeah, let me add to that explanation. Everybody knows the saying, the rich get richer, right? But there's a part of a reason why they do, right? Because, so for example, when Elon Musk borrows money based on his stock portfolio, Ben, everybody knows that he's got enough money to cover that loan, so he can get it at a really low interest rate, right? Whereas if you're poor and you really need money in an emergency, you gotta go to a payday loan, and that charges you several 100% interest rate. I mean, it way higher, literally 100 times higher than what Elon Musk has to pay. And so when we go past the debt ceiling, basically we're declaring that we're a banana republic and we might not pay our debts. So then people then turn around and charge us really high interest rates because they say, well, now it's not safe to put our money in America. Apparently you guys are clowns and might not pay us back. Is that a fairly decent explanation of it?
I think it's a fair way to put it, and you have to realize, the damage or the eroding at the reputation of the dollar can happen before we even hit the debt ceiling. We came pretty close back in the Obama years, and even getting close to hitting the debt ceiling, right, within a few days, that can start to shake financial markets. That can start to lead people to think maybe the U.S. can get closer to default than we thought before. The fact that they're getting this close makes me lose confidence in the dollar. And so that cycle, that spiral starts to happen before you even hit the debt ceiling.
Yeah, so Ben, if we're being honest about it, obviously the Republicans are maniacs for even proposing this. This is not about new spending. They're saying, why don't we just do like Donald Trump does and go, I just don't want to pay my debts, right? So, like every reporter knows they're lunatics, right? But you can't call them lunatics because, oh, well, neutrality and all that stuff. So, but the Democrats could call them lunatics, but they don't. What the hell's wrong with them? So you have a quote in here where Sherrod Brown, supposed to be like big, strong, progressive senator, this is, he asked the Republicans, why not just do what presidents of both parties and leaders of both parties in the House and Senate have done in the past? So you might say, what's wrong with that quote? Well, what are you pleading with the Republicans for? Why isn't the quote that Sherrod Brown is giving you and the other reporters is, the Republicans are raging lunatics who are threatening to destroy the American economy? Isn't that, the Republicans do that to the Democrats all the time. Is that kind of unbalanced playing field partly encouraging and emboldening Republicans to play chicken with our economy because they think these schmuck Democrats can't fight back, so we might as well just do whatever the hell we want?
I think part of it is also the fact that Democrats still really want to do this, solve this problem in a bipartisan way.
Why?
They could.
Can I ask Ben?
I think because they hold on to this semblance of, we can solve things in a bipartisan manner, maybe more than Republicans do. You look at the infrastructure bill, that was something that was passed through in a bipartisan way. Maybe they're clutching onto that.
Nah, I think no, Ben. I'll tell you what's going on. Sorry, I keep interrupting. But
go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Democrats want to be bipartisan. It's not because, like, I called them idiots while you were talking, but it's not just that they're stupid. It's that they have the same donors. They have the same donors as the Republicans. So but they have the whole Senate, they have the whole House, they have the presidency. They don't need the Republicans at all. Republicans never ever asked the Democrats to come along. They never helped the Democrats by saying, let's do this in a bipartisan way so you can get credit too. You'd have to be a schmuck, an idiot in politics to do that. But the Democrats do ask Republicans for permission because in reality, Ben, they're asking their donors for permission, aren't they?
You kind of get the same thing with, I think, the SALT, state and local tax deduction. It's a similar deal where you're starting to see that Democrats do have some really big money interests as well, and that's where you start to see some fraying. Right, Bernie is coming out and saying, "Wait a second, we're not the party trying to pass these tax cuts for the rich." And so that is at play, right? You do have some splits within the Democratic Party, and some people are more outspoken about it. Others will pipe down and try to again uphold that bipartisanship. But I think it's important to remember that we were in this same problem just 2 months ago. Republicans caved at the last minute. McConnell came out with a last minute extension of 2 months. Here we are now. We're going to hit the debt ceiling estimated on December 15th. And both sides are saying the same thing. Republicans are not going to give them, or at least according to Minority Leader McConnell, they're not going to give that same kind of extension. Democrats still want to do it in a bipartisan way, but they can do this through reconciliation, right? There is an avenue for them to do this on their own. And they're hinting that that's not out of the cards. But
why wouldn't you just do that? No, Ben, none of this is so silly. First of all, the Republicans are clearly bluffing. They have the same donors as the Democrats. There's no way their donors are gonna let them burn $15 trillion of wealth. That is not gonna happen, okay? So the only way that the Republicans would risk doing that is if we're in the Trump era and they're saying, yeah, we burn down the economy and we blame it on Biden so we could take over and do a full fascist takeover, right? That would be the only reason they would do it. And the only reason they would do it is because they're so emboldened by Democratic weakness that they think these idiots will never ever fight back. We could burn the whole economy to the ground and then blame it on Biden and they'll easily believe us, easily, right? So that's the only reason why anybody would ever contemplate this. So does anybody ever ask the Democrats, hey schmucks, they're threatening to burn down the country and you wanna work with them? Like seriously, how does that make any sense?
I was on the Hill this week. I was asking them pretty much that. I said, why not? You've heard from Republicans, they've said, we're not gonna give you this break again, and we're not gonna join you on this. I asked them, why not do this through, you have the avenue, right? You can do this through reconciliation. And they said, they're saying, we're exploring all options. The problem is the clock is ticking. Reconciliation, if they do that, is gonna take a few weeks. And so they don't have that much time. I think, I've pushed this with them. They just say, we're talking about it. We're figuring out a plan. And it's still the same stagnation that we saw last time.
They're talking while Rome burns. All right, last thing, Ben. Do the Republicans want some sort of concession? So I can see how this game of chicken is played. It would make sense to me if the donors want something, the Republicans ask for it and go, oh, we'll be really mean, they're the bad cops. And the Democrats are the good cops, oh golly gee, there was nothing we could do. And so we had to give it to them in order to get the debt ceiling in return. So is that the case? Are the Republicans even asking for anything?
The thing that sparked, it was never, Mitch McConnell never came out and said this, but it wasn't until Democrats threatened to get rid of the filibuster and do the debt ceiling on their own without, after getting rid of the filibuster, or at least carving out part of the filibuster to do that, that he said, well, wait a second, I can do this extension. That's just how it happened, chronological events. And so I think that might be the stick that Democrats can use. Obviously, Republicans want to stop the Build Back Better plan as much as they can. We saw that with McCarthy's speech. I think that was last night. Yeah, 8 hours, 8-hour-long speech.
Going.
Clearly, they want to scrap that. And so that might be what they're trying to do. If they can get any sort of, you shrink the bill or cut something out, maybe that's what they want. They definitely don't want Democrats to touch the filibuster. That is for certain.
Yeah, no, Democrats or a Democratic leadership is obviously either corrupt or maniacally stupid. Because if you actually wanted to get rid of the filibuster so you can pass your entire agenda, this would be a perfect opportunity. You would say they're gonna burn the country down and cost 6 million jobs. I'm not gonna let them cost 6 million jobs. Filibuster's done. We pass the debt ceiling, we pass voting rights, and we move forward. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. So Ben, if you're talking to those Democrats, ask them why they're such liars. It's so obvious they could get rid of the filibuster and pass their agenda, but they don't want their own agenda. They should admit on the record, because if they get rid of the filibuster, they can have their own agenda. They're choosing not to have their own agenda, including the debt ceiling. So Republicans, we get it, they're monsters. Democrats, you should challenge them on being liars. Okay, thank you for putting up with me.
Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
Ben writes at Insider, articles have excellent information, that's why we have him on, and good analysis. Thank you so much, Ben, I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, have a good night.
You too. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.